What's up, family? Welcome to my makeshift studio in my bedroom that I made to talk about my book. Let's do this. All right, so I wrote this book, this one, that is a sample copy. This is a sample. It's going to be a hardcover and stuff and look different. But anyways, I wrote a book. It's about feelings, and I never intended on writing I Cry in Corners, the book. I always intended on having a podcast called I Cry in Corners, where I talked about feelings and leadership and everything in between. And what had happened was I put in to write a book about fruitfulness. And many of you that have been with me for a long time know that I have navigated infertility for a really, really, really long time. And I don't say I'm battling it. I say that I have victory and I am fruitful, and I wanted to talk about that. And so I pitched a book called Fruitful, and they said, okay, cool, rock and roll, let's write that book. And then when I got into the throes of it, they were like, so what do you think about I Cry in Corners? And I was like, yeah, I do it all the time. What do you think about it? And then they were like, no, seriously though, we would like you to maybe write a book about I Cry in Corners. And I said, look, if I write I Cry in Corners, it's gotta be about feelings, but it also has to be distinctly different than the podcast, because the last thing I wanted was my family and the podcast, who's been with me forever, for 8 seasons, to feel like they were getting regurgitated information. And so I prayed about it, and the book is different than the podcast. The book talks about specific feelings and how Jesus dealt with them, like we do on the podcast, but it's different in a way that I've never shared on the podcast, which means I get to give you all new information. I'm really excited about it. This was a really hard book to write because I wrote it in the middle of a move to a new city with a new job, in a new house, a new community. There was a lot of crying. I even wrote the whole book, sent it in, and they said, cool, write it again. And then I did it. And then they said, okay, cool, add 30,000 more words. So this was a rough one. This was good. So my prayer is that the crying in my kitchen that I did during this book will impact you in such a way that it will inspire you to steward your feelings well, to surrender your feelings at the throne, and to, that sounds real churchy, I got my pastor voice on. Look, it'll just help you navigate how you feel, find out why you feel that way, and instead of going to the amphitheater of social media to navigate it, or immediately running to your therapist, that you would take a moment to pause, to seek the Lord in it. See, that's the big overall etching theme of this book, is that Jesus didn't have a teledoc. Jesus didn't have a therapist. Jesus had the scriptures. Jesus had a very makeshift community, and Jesus had solitude with his Father. And so he sought his Father, and he looked back at the scriptures, and he navigated life with a pretty awesome community that was sketchy sometimes. And I believe that those 3 things, those 3 pillars, are things that we should as well have in our life, and have to help us navigate our feelings. And so it's not a self-help book. No, we still need to go to church and go to therapy. But it is a guide. It's a lot like how Nomad was a guide to wildernesses. This is a guide to feelings and navigating feelings like Jesus did. And so my prayer is that it blesses you. My prayer is that, that you enjoy it and that you share it and pre-order it. It comes out in August. So yeah, I Cry in Corners, now going to be available on Audible, hardcover, and ebook. So they sent me copies of like the galleys, the samples. Look, it's I Cry in Corners. This is not technically the book, even though it is technically the book. Anyways, okay. Well, I love you. I hope you're well and kicking butt and taking names. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Great.